Over the last couple of weeks, I have been watching and reading and reflecting on what happened on this day 20 years ago. You might have been doing the same. You might have seen things in the press, the media, stories. There have been movies made about this as well, documentaries. For those who were alive at the time, and probably most of us who are watching right now, have some memory of what happened. What we perhaps were doing at the time when we first heard, when we first saw those images of the planes going into those towers in New York. It shook our world. It shook me as a young man at the time. And it made me think about what I put my priorities in, what the world puts our priorities in. And we have our gospel and our first reading today, which are just the readings for Saturday in the 23rd week in Ordinary Time. But I think they couldn't be more appropriate for today, for this September 11th. The one who listens and does nothing is like the man who built his house on soil with no foundations. As soon as the river bore down, it collapsed, and what a ruin that house became. The gospel here is talking not about physical buildings. This is not an architectural textbook telling us how to build strong houses. It's talking about our faith. It's talking about our love. It's talking about our life. That our life is built on solid foundations, upon rock. And that when wind, when storms, when earthquakes come, as they did at the time of Jesus and the early Christians, or perhaps when wars and terrorism and the things like occurred on this day 20 years ago come, will we be destroyed? Buildings can be destroyed, buildings can be damaged, but our faith is solid. We persist, we continue in the midst of great difficulties. What's happened over the last 18 months and a little bit more, as we've been forced to lock down, for some people, it's been a great opportunity to really consider what is important in our life. Where do we get our strength? It's not in being able to travel. It's not being able to make huge amounts of money, because that's been difficult to do. It's not even in the celebrations and the entertainment that we have. What is solid is Jesus Christ, who lives inside us. This is what we dwell on. This is what we have our foundations and our strength in. And when we have Jesus Christ living inside us and we keep nourishing that presence of Christ inside us with the word and with the sacraments, then we stay strong when things get difficult. And this is what we saw on this day 20 years ago. Heroic people, people of faith, who responded courageously in the midst of fear, who responded with love in the midst of fear. This is what we've seen also over the last 2 years. Good people who've responded with love for God and love for others, have been willing to change their life a little bit, their practices, perhaps their architecture, because they love God and they love their neighbour. They've been built on solid rock. That they're producing good fruit, as this gospel talks about. Today we honour the Blessed Virgin Mary with the Mass of the Queen of Peace. Let's continue to pray for peace in our world. The world has changed a lot in 20 years. Perhaps we are more fragile than we were 20 years ago. Let's continue to pray for peace. Let us be people who work for peace, who allow the goodness that we welcome into our life, that presence of God, let us share that goodness so it produces fruits of peace, of love, of justice throughout our world. The one who listens and does nothing is like the man who built his house on soil with no foundations. As soon as the river bore down on it, it collapsed, and what a ruin that house became. Let us lay our foundations solid on the love of God. And let us be people who spread the peace of God to our world today and always.